The amber sunlight cast long shadows across the Wyoming territory as Jessie Jenkins stumbled through the tall grass along the Green River, her once fine dress torn and mudded, her hands raw from days of desperate travel. Fort Bridger lay just beyond the next ridge, so the last traveler had told her, but Jessie could go no farther. Her strength, like her hopes, had finally abandoned her. April 1878 had begun with promise. Now, not even halfway through the month, everything she'd built lay in ruins. Collapsing at the riverbank, Jessie let the tears come freely, no longer caring who might hear her sobs. The rushing water carried away her cries as her mind replayed the flames consuming her father's general store, the accusations flung at her family like stones, and the final indignity of being run out of town with nothing but the clothes on her back. "Miss, you all right there?" The deep voice startled her, and Jessie scrambled backward, eyes darting to find its source. A man sat atop a chestnut stallion, silhouetted against the setting sun. His broad shoulders and the distinct shape of his Stetson marked him unmistakably as one of the territory's cowboys. As he dismounted and stepped closer, Jessie could make out a weathered face with kind blue eyes that seemed at odds with the hard lines etched by sun and wind. "Don't mean to frighten you, madam," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Just ain't common to find a lady alone by the river this time of evening." Jessie wiped at her tears with dirty hands, only succeeding in smearing mud across her face. "I'm fine," she lied, her voice cracking with the effort. The cowboy's expression softened as he took in her disheveled appearance. "I don't reckon that's true," he said gently. "Name's Lucas Nathans. I run cattle on the north side of these parts." He offered a canteen. "Might help to wet your throat before telling me what's brought you here." Hesitantly, Jessie accepted the water, drinking deeply before finding her voice. "Jessie Jenkins," she managed. I was headed to Fort Bridger. My father always said if trouble found us I should make for there. Said he had friends." Her voice faltered again. "But I don't know if they'll remember him. It's been 15 years since he left." Lucas nodded, settling on a nearby rock. "Fort Bridger's not far, but you won't make it before dark, and these parts get dangerous after sundown." He studied her thoughtfully. "Whatever's chasing you, Miss Jenkins, it seems to have done its worst already." The simple truth of his words broke something inside her, and fresh tears spilled down Jessie's cheeks. "Everything's gone," she whispered. "The store, our home. They said my father was stealing, but he would never." She couldn't continue, overwhelmed by grief and exhaustion. Lucas waited patiently until her tears subsided. When she looked up again, the sky had darkened to deep indigo with the first stars appearing. "Seems to me," he said quietly, "that a person can only carry so much sorrow before breaking under the weight." He gestured toward the east, where the land lay in darkness. "Then let's start fresh with sunrise. New day brings new chances, that's what my pa always told me." Something in his calm certainty steadied her. Jessie drew a deep breath. "I have nowhere to go. My ranch house is a few miles north. Nothing fancy, but there's a spare room where you can get cleaned up and proper rest." He stood, offering his hand. "Tomorrow, I'll take you into Fort Bridger myself." Jessie hesitated. Trusting strangers wasn't wise, especially for a woman alone, but there was something solid and dependable about Lucas Nathans that eased her fears. "Thank you," she said finally, placing her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle as he helped her to her feet. "Can you ride?" he asked, leading her toward his horse. "It's been years," Jessie admitted. "No matter, thunder here is steady as they come." He lifted her easily onto the saddle before mounting behind her, keeping a respectful distance between their bodies. "Hold tight to the horn. I'll handle the reins." As they rode through the deepening twilight, Jessie found herself drawing strength from the sturdy presence at her back. For the first time in days, she didn't feel completely alone. The ranch house appeared over a gentle rise, a sturdy two-story structure of weathered pine with a wide porch and smoke curling from the stone chimney. Light glowed from windows on both floors, and as they approached, the door swung open. "Lucas, that you coming in so late?" A woman's voice called out, and Jessie tensed. "It's me, Aunt Martha," Lucas answered, dismounting and helping Jessie down. "And I've brought a guest who needs our help." The woman in the doorway was tall and silver-haired, her face lined but handsome. She wore a practical dress and apron, and her sharp eyes missed nothing as she took in Jessie's bedraggled state. "Land's sakes, child, you look half dead," Martha exclaimed, hurrying forward. "Lucas, stable that horse and fetch some hot water. This young lady needs tending." Before Jessie could protest, Martha had ushered her inside and seated her at a wooden table in a warm kitchen that smelled of fresh bread and coffee. "Don't you worry about explanations now," the older woman said, placing a steaming mug in Jessie's hands. "Drink this and get warm. Everything else can wait till morning." Too exhausted to argue, Jessie sipped the sweet tea gratefully. Martha bustled around, preparing a plate of bread, cheese, and cold meat that made Jessie realize how long it had been since she'd eaten properly. After she'd finished eating, Martha led her upstairs to a small but clean bedroom with a copper tub that Lucas filled with steaming water before discreetly withdrawing. "There's a nightgown on the bed that should fit well enough," Martha said. "Belonged to my daughter before she married and moved to California." Her eyes softened. "Whatever trouble you're running from, you're safe here tonight." When Jessie was finally clean and settled into the surprisingly comfortable bed, she found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. The past week's events played through her mind in terrible clarity: the sheriff pounding on their door, the accusations of fraud and theft, her father's protests falling on deaf ears. The worst had been the fire. Whether set deliberately or accidentally in the chaos, it had spread quickly, consuming not just the store but their adjoining home. In the confusion, she'd been separated from her father. The last she'd seen of him, he was being marched away by townsmen whose faces twisted with anger. She didn't even know if he was alive. Jessie's tears came silently now, soaking into the pillow until exhaustion finally pulled her into sleep. Morning arrived with golden light streaming through lace curtains. For a disorienting moment, Jessie didn't know where she was. Then memory returned, and with it came fresh grief but also a small spark of something like hope. On a chair by the bed lay a simple dress of faded blue cotton, alongside undergarments and stockings. Jessie dressed quickly, grateful for clean clothes, and made her way downstairs. The kitchen was empty, but through the window she could see Lucas in the barnyard, speaking with a ranch hand. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up, raising a hand in greeting before heading toward the house. "Morning," he said, stepping inside and removing his hat. His hair was the color of wheat, Jessie noticed, and neatly trimmed. "Aunt Martha's gone to gather eggs. How'd you sleep?" "Better than I expected," Jessie admitted. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Nathans. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't found me." "Lucas, please," he corrected gently. "And no thanks needed. Any decent man would do the same." He poured coffee from the pot warming on the stove. "If you're feeling up to it, I'd like to hear what brought you to the river yesterday. Might be I can help beyond just a night's lodging." Martha returned as Jessie began her story, setting down a basket of eggs and joining them at the table. Jessie told them everything about her father's general store in the small town of Silver Creek, the recent arrival of a wealthy businessman who tried to buy them out, and the sudden accusations of theft and fraud when they refused to sell. Father kept meticulous books, Jessie explained, her hands wrapped around her coffee cup. But when the sheriff came, someone had tampered with them, made it look like we'd been cheating customers for years. Her voice hardened. It was Blackwell, the businessman, I'm certain of it. But he's friendly with the mayor and no one would listen to us. Blackwell, Lucas frowned. Tall fellow with a silk vest and a watch chain made of gold nuggets, Jessie nodded, surprised. You know him, heard of him. Victor Blackwell's been buying up businesses all over Wyoming territory this past year. Lucas's expression darkened. And there's been talk about how conveniently his competitors seem to run into trouble right before he makes his offers. Martha clicked her tongue. That man's got no more conscience than a rattlesnake, but proving anything against him won't be easy. I don't care about proving anything, Jessie said fiercely. I just want to find my father, after the fire. I don't know what happened to him. I heard someone say the men were taking him to the county jail, but when I tried to follow, Blackwell's associate warned me to leave town if I didn't want to join him. Lucas and Martha exchanged troubled glances. County jail would be in Green River, Lucas said. That's 2 days' ride from here. Then that's where I need to go, Jessie declared, rising from her chair. Hold on now, Lucas said, standing as well. We promised to take you to Fort Bridger today, and that's what we'll do. Your father's friends there might have connections that can help, and rushing off half-cocked to Green River won't do either of you any good. Jessie wanted to argue but knew he was right. After all she'd been through, the thought of finding allies was too tempting to dismiss. All right, she agreed reluctantly. Fort Bridger first. They set out after breakfast, this time with Jessie riding a gentle mare named Daisy while Lucas mounted Thunder. The journey took most of the morning, giving Jessie time to appreciate the beauty of the land, rolling hills covered in spring wildflowers, groves of aspen with their new leaves shimmering in the breeze, and distant mountains still capped with snow. Fort Bridger had grown considerably since its days as a military outpost. Now, a thriving town with a main street lined with businesses, it bustled with activity as they rode in. Lucas led them to a 2-story building with a sign proclaiming County Marshal over the door. Marshal Wilson's fair-minded, Lucas explained as they dismounted. And he's got connections throughout the territory. If anyone can help us make sense of what happened in Silver Creek, it's him. Inside, they found a lean, gray-haired man in his 50s reviewing wanted posters at a desk. He looked up as they entered, his stern expression softening into a smile. Lucas Nathans, been too long since you've graced my office. His gaze shifted to Jessie. And who might this young lady be? Marshal, this is Miss Jessie Jenkins, Lucas said. She's had some trouble that I think you should hear about. The marshal gestured to chairs, and once again, Jessie found herself recounting the events in Silver Creek. This time, she included every detail she could remember about Blackwell and his associates. When she finished, Marshal Wilson leaned back, stroking his mustache thoughtfully. Jenkins, not Harold Jenkins's daughter, Jessie's heart leaped. Yes, did you know my father? Know him, the marshal chuckled. He pulled me out of a rushing river during the war, saved my life. His expression sobered. I lost track of him years back, but I heard he'd settled with a family somewhere east. I'm mighty sorry about what's happened, Miss Jenkins. Then you believe me? Jessie asked, scarcely daring to hope. I do, and not just because of your father. The marshal stood and retrieved a folder from a cabinet. Blackwell's name has crossed my desk more than once lately. Nothing solid enough for an arrest, but enough smoke to suggest a fire. He thumbed through the papers. Here it is. 3 businesses in different towns, all refused to sell to Blackwell, all subsequently accused of crimes that cost them their livelihoods. Lucas leaned forward. Any of them end up in jail. 2 fled the territory. 1 died in an accident before trial. The marshal's eyes met Jessie's. "If your father's in Green River Jail, we need to move fast. Blackwell's not one to leave loose ends." "I'll ride with you," Lucas said immediately. The marshal nodded. "Good. We'll leave at first light tomorrow. I need to send some telegrams tonight, see what I can learn about the situation in Green River." "I'm coming too," Jessie stated firmly. Both men started to protest, but she cut them off. "He's my father. I won't sit safe in Fort Bridger while he's in danger." After a moment, the marshal nodded. "Fair enough, Miss Jenkins, but you'll need to follow our lead once we get there. Blackwell's dangerous and we can't help your father if we're watching over you." "I understand," Jessie agreed. "Thank you both." The marshal arranged for Jessie to stay at the boarding house run by his sister, while Lucas returned to his ranch to prepare for their journey. That evening, as Jessie sat in her small room staring out at the darkening street, a knock came at her door. Lucas stood in the hallway, hat in hand. "Thought you might want to know," the marshal got word back from Green River. "Your father's alive, being held for trial next week." Relief washed over Jessie, leaving her weak-kneed. "Thank God," she whispered. "There's more," Lucas continued. "The telegram mentioned that the main witness against your father is due to arrive from Silver Creek tomorrow, one of Blackwell's men bringing evidence of the fraud. We need to get there before that witness can testify," Jessie realized. Lucas nodded. "Marshall's changed plans." "We leave tonight, ride straight through. Can you handle that? For my father?" "Absolutely." The journey to Green River was grueling. They rode through the night, stopping only to rest the horses and snatch brief moments of sleep. By the time they reached the outskirts of town late the following day, Jessie was so saddle-sore and exhausted she could barely stand when Lucas helped her dismount. "We need to be careful now," Marshal Wilson warned. "Blackwell might have people watching for trouble." They left their horses at a livery on the edge of town and proceeded on foot, keeping to side streets. The jail was a sturdy stone building near the courthouse, with barred windows and a single guard at the front door. "Wait here," the marshal instructed, straightening his badge. "Let me handle this first part." Jessie and Lucas watched from an alley as Marshal Wilson approached the jail. Through the window, they could see him speaking with the Green River sheriff, showing papers and gesturing emphatically. "What's he doing?" Jessie whispered. "Using his authority as a territorial marshal," Lucas explained. "He outranks the local sheriff. If your father's being held without proper evidence, the marshal can demand his release." After what seemed like an eternity, the door opened again, and Marshal Wilson emerged with another man tall and thin, with a gray-streaked beard and stooped shoulders that hadn't been there when Jessie last saw him. "Father!" she cried, forgetting caution and rushing forward. Harold Jenkins looked up, disbelief and joy transforming his haggard face. "Jessie, my God, Jessie!" He caught her in his arms, holding her tight. "I thought you were dead. They told me the fire had." His voice broke. "I'm all right," Jessie assured him through tears. "And you're free now." "Not exactly," Marshal Wilson interjected grimly. "I've secured temporary release into my custody pending investigation, but the charges haven't been dropped. Blackwell's got the local judge in his pocket." Harold's face hardened. "That snake. He wanted our land because he found out there's a natural spring on the back property perfect for the railroad he's investing in. When I wouldn't sell, he decided to take it another way. The important thing now is getting both of you somewhere safe," Lucas said, joining them. "Mr. Jenkins, I'm Lucas Nathans. I found your daughter by the river outside Fort Bridger." Harold studied Lucas for a moment before extending his hand. "Then I owe you a debt I can never repay. Thank you for helping my Jessie." Their reunion was cut short by Marshal Wilson's urgent command. "Inside, all of you. Ryder coming fast looks like Blackwell's man." They ducked into a nearby hardware store just as a horseman galloped past, heading for the jail. Through the window, Jessie caught a glimpse of a familiar face, Blackwell's right-hand man, the one who'd threatened her in Silver Creek. "He'll raise the alarm when he finds out Father's gone," she said. "Which means we need to move," the marshal agreed. "I've got a friend with a wagon waiting at the edge of town. We'll head for Fort Bridger tonight. I've sent for a circuit judge who'll hear this case fairly, but he won't arrive for another week." They slipped out the back door and through a maze of alleys until they reached the waiting wagon. As they climbed aboard, shouts erupted from the direction of the jail. "They've discovered you're missing," Lucas said grimly. "Hold on." The driver snapped the reins and the wagon lurched forward, picking up speed as they cleared the town limits. Behind them, riders appeared, giving chase in the fading light. "They're gaining," Jessie cried, looking back. Lucas pulled a rifle from beneath the seat. "Keep your heads down." He fired twice over the pursuers' heads, not aiming to hit but to warn them off. The riders faltered, dropping back slightly, but continued their pursuit. "We can't outrun them in this wagon," Marshal Wilson said. "We need to find a place to make a stand." Harold pointed ahead. "They're that outcropping of rocks. We can defend it from all sides." The driver guided the wagon behind the rocks, and they quickly took positions among the boulders. As their pursuers approached, Marshal Wilson stood, badge gleaming in the last light of day. "That's far enough," he called out. "I'm U.S. Marshal James Wilson. Harold Jenkins is in my custody pending a proper investigation. Any man who interferes is obstructing federal justice." The riders pulled up short, conferring among themselves. After a tense moment, all but one turned back toward town. The remaining man urged his horse forward slowly. "This isn't over, Marshal," he called. "Mr. Blackwell has powerful friends. That thief will face justice one way or another. Tell Blackwell that if anything happens to the Jenkins family, I'll personally see him hang," the marshal replied evenly. "Now ride back to your boss." With a final glare, the man wheeled his horse around and galloped after the others. "That won't be the end of it," Lucas said quietly. "No," the marshal agreed. "But it buys us time to reach Fort Bridger. From there, we can build a proper case against Blackwell." They continued through the night, taking turns driving and watching for pursuit. By dawn, they had put significant distance between themselves and Green River, and by nightfall the next day, they reached Fort Bridger safely. Over the following week, Jessie and her father stayed at the marshal's home while Lucas returned to his ranch. The marshal sent deputies to Silver Creek to gather evidence, finding several townspeople willing to testify about Blackwell's threats once they were assured of protection. When Lucas rode into town 3 days before the circuit judge was due to arrive, Jessie was in the marshal's garden hanging laundry. She felt his presence before she saw him, turning to find him watching her from the gate. "You look better," he said simply. "Less haunted." Jessie smiled, realizing it was true. With her father safe and justice in sight, some of her burden had lifted. "I feel better, thanks to you." Lucas stepped into the garden, removing his hat. "I brought news. Blackwell's left the territory, fled to Colorado, according to my sources. Seems he got word about the circuit judge and the witnesses coming forward." "So it's over." Jessie hardly dared believe it. "Not entirely. Your father still needs to be officially cleared, but without Blackwell or his evidence, that shouldn't be difficult." He hesitated. "I also brought something else." From his saddlebag, he withdrew a small pouch. "I rode to Silver Creek to the site of your store. Thought you might want this." Inside the pouch was a silver locket, blackened with smoke but intact. Jessie gasped, recognizing the necklace her mother had worn until her death 5 years earlier. "How did you find this?" "Dug through the ashes until my hands were raw," Lucas admitted. "Figured some things are too precious to lose. Tears filled Jessie's eyes as she clutched the locket. "I don't know how to thank you." Lucas stepped closer, his voice low. "You don't need to thank me, Jessie. I did it because—" He paused, struggling for words. "Because since I found you by that river, I haven't been able to think about much else." Jessie's heart quickened. Over the past weeks, through danger and hardship, Lucas had been a constant presence, steady, dependable, and increasingly dear to her. "What happens now?" she asked softly. "Our store is gone, our home destroyed." "Your father and I have been talking," Lucas replied. "There's good land adjacent to my ranch, fertile soil with a creek running through it. Perfect for the fresh start you both need. You do that for us." Lucas reached for her hand, his touch gentle but sure. "I do a lot more than that, Jessie Jenkins, if you'd let me." The circuit judge arrived as promised, and after hearing testimony from the witnesses the marshal had gathered, he dismissed all charges against Harold Jenkins. Furthermore, he issued warrants for Blackwell's arrest on multiple counts of fraud, intimidation, and conspiracy. With their names cleared but their former lives in ashes, Jessie and her father accepted Lucas's offer. Harold purchased the land near the Nathan's ranch, and with Lucas's help, began building a new home and planning a small trading post to serve the surrounding ranches. Throughout that summer, as the new buildings took shape, Jessie found herself drawn more and more to Lucas. They rode together across the range, picnicked by the Green River, and spent evenings on the porch of his ranch house, talking until the stars crowded the sky. On a warm evening in August, Lucas took Jessie back to the spot where he'd first found her. The river flowed peaceful and golden in the sunset light, betraying nothing of the despair she'd felt there months before. "I wanted to bring you here," Lucas said, spreading a blanket on the grassy bank. "To replace that memory with a better one." Jessie sat beside him, watching the water flow. "It's strange to think how different my life might have been if you hadn't ridden by that day." "I wasn't supposed to be here at all," Lucas admitted. "I'd planned to check the north pasture, but something told me to ride this way instead." He took her hand. "Now I think I know why." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, Lucas turned to her. "Jessie, I've known since that first night that you were someone special. These past months have only made me more certain." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small box. "I'm not a wealthy man, but I've got a good ranch, a sound heart, and enough love for you to last a lifetime." Inside the box was a delicate gold ring with a small diamond that caught the fading light. "Jessie Jenkins, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Tears blurred Jessie's vision as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Lucas, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then drew her into his arms for their first kiss, tender at first, then deepening with the promise of all they would share. When they finally broke apart, the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. "A fresh start with sunrise," Jessie murmured, echoing his words from that first night. Lucas smiled, touching her cheek gently. "Every day with you will be just that." They married that autumn, with Marshal Wilson standing in for Jessie's father during the ceremony, and Aunt Martha dabbing at her eyes in the front row. The small church in Fort Bridger was filled with well-wishers from surrounding ranches, many of whom had heard the story of how Lucas had found Jessie by the river and helped clear her father's name. Harold Jenkins gave the couple a special gift, a deed to the spring-fed parcel of land he'd acquired adjacent to Lucas's ranch, expanding their holdings and securing their future. As years passed, the Nathan's ranch flourished, as did Jenkins' trading post, which became a popular stop for travelers along the Green River. Jessie and Lucas welcomed 3 children, 2 sons and a daughter who grew strong and capable in the shadow of the mountains. Sometimes, especially when spring brought wildflowers to the riverbank, Jessie would return to the spot where Lucas had found her. No longer a place of sorrow, it had become sacred ground, the beginning of everything good in her life. On their 10th anniversary, they picnicked there with their children playing nearby. As the little ones chased butterflies through the grass, Lucas put his arm around his wife. "Any regrets?" he asked, kissing her temple. Jessie leaned against his shoulder, watching the river flow past, constant yet ever-changing, like life itself. "Not one," she answered truthfully. "You promised me a fresh start, Lucas Nathans, and you've given me so much more." The setting sun bathed them in golden light. Two souls who had found each other at the darkest moment and built something beautiful from the ashes of the past. And as they had done every day since that fateful evening, they looked forward to what tomorrow's sunrise would bring.